Good morning and welcome to the 28th annual exhibit of hydrogen fuel cell technologies. We've been here for ages discussing changes. Actually, I have two guests next to me, and we talk, it seems to me, year after year about developments. Things are changing now because the tempo has to increase. We have to move forward more quickly. And how to facilitate that? Well, to do that, we need organizations that actually combine heads. I'll be talking to Gerd, who's to the far left there. He's CEO of VDMA. VDMA is the German abbreviation for the Mechanical Engineering Association. And Dr. Manfred Stefener, who's right to my left here, and he's the president of VDMA, specifically VDMA fuel cells. We'll see the difference shortly, but welcome.
Thank you.
And the topic for today, of course, is German innovation clusters and how they accelerate the industrial production of fuel cells. Open question to both of you. VDMA, we need the large picture and then the focus on fuel cells here. Can you tell us a bit about the organization, its size, and what it does?
I can do so, Brian. Thank you for the question. VDMA is an umbrella organization for machinery and plant manufacturing. We have about 3,400 members in Germany, but also in the neighbor countries. And we represent the whole sector. Our DNA is engineering, our DNA is production, and that fits quite well together with the discussion we have today here.
Yeah, so and what we are doing specifically in the fuel cell sector, so there we have seen also like in the last years, especially also like during Corona pandemic, so we have seen like a large growth. We have now like 83 members, and so what we do is like we bring companies, we bring institutions, we bring everybody together, networking. So this is a very important, so because like the industry is dependent on that, so exchange of knowledge and bringing things forward as you introduced, so because we have all the responsibility and also like the need for higher speed to bring like knowledge together and bring that important technology forward. So we're doing that with many specific events and other things so that we will talk about today.
If I go back in time, it used to be coordinating R&D people, geeks with their little devices. Now you basically integrate also people, maybe even primarily people with already established products. What is the point of this integration? I mean, people manufacture products. Is there a necessity for combining skills and integrating skills in order to create more dynamics in the production and industrialization of fuel cells? Yeah?
Yes, for sure. In the end, fuel cell business is still a new business. It has no 100-year experience, so we are still in the process in the moment to build up a value chain. And that needs new skills, that needs new knowledge, that needs another type of working together than in past. As you mentioned, Brian, and I know you are also long here at this show, it was an R&D show, it was small booths. Now there is an industry show. We still have some questions to solve with R&D. But now we are in the market, and to go further in this market, we need cost reduction, and the way to get cost reduction is to build up a good value chain which can create this.
Yeah, so in my experiences, it really works. Yeah, so I'm 29 years in the industry, and we are seeing like a lot of activity now, so especially like in the last years. I think so an important part of VDMA is also to talk about, so with all members, about like the development in the industry and so what happens worldwide, to give also like security for important R&D investments, but also now that's more important now, like investments in production capacities going forward with the industry. I think the next 20 years will be dominated especially by exactly that. Increasing capacities, investments in production, especially, of course, like in these important sectors, hydrogen and fuel cell.
We have, of course, for the exhibitors here, a networking evening. And of course, I'm making fun of this word networking. The networking evening sounds like a lot of alcohol, some food, and relaxation. Another way of looking at networking, though, is someone's on the phone, constantly organizing meetings. But then behind that, there's this third dimension of core skills. That is, someone has to recognize where there is off-the-shelf material science, manufacturing capacities, all sorts of things that is common to your organization, engineering association. So could you give us a description of, beyond the alcohol, what actually transpires with the networking feature? Who organizes that? Is it the companies themselves, or does the organization itself actually take on a leading role in the networking process?
I think networking also don't end at the end of the day. Networking at the evening, it's still part of association work, and it creates openness and trust. And I think there are two main characteristics we need to come further in this sector. Openness and trust we need. And concrete to your question, we are dealing with workshops in the wild. In the last 3-4 years, we enlarged our activities on the production side, and we find out that these workshops where people stand around a table, we have topic tables, world cafes, all these formats, to discuss the problems they are still existing and how we can solve and how we can give as an association and as a working group play a role in this process. And workshops are on the one side, and we are, but I think we discuss it later, more concrete on the innovation cluster, which is a special format within this discussion.
Yeah, and especially, for example, so we, as VDMA, we are not doing like that on our own. So we are also cooperating with other partners, for example, NOW, for example, organizing supplier workshops and bringing people together there. So like in the near future, there's like a workshop about degradation in fuel cells, very important topic to avoid like many mistakes. I think that's important to bring it like into the industry. So we had like already like workshops about like specific manufacturing topics. We have PEM, we have SOFC. So it's a pretty broad coverage of many topics in the industry.
It's interesting that you mentioned the factor trust, Gerd, because when I go back 20 years, the R&D scientists would be sitting here with their, proprietary technology is the word they would always use. And then, so what's your catalyst? Never get an answer. It's like everyone is sitting on top of their own little innovations. And this actually impeded development to some extent. It actually slowed down the process of seeing what works with other people. That is, trust is a factor in developing this. And you already mentioned this, but we're moving from this issue of networking, which involves getting people to cooperate together, onto the cluster concept.
Okay.
So let's
one point to what you mentioned, I think, but that's time of the change we have, that there are not any longer only the researchers which sit together. Now there are the production guys which come to the meetings, and the production guys, intellectual property will always play a major role, and that's important for the companies. But if you not discuss on production question with a bit more openness, you will not get the best solution from the production machine manufacturer and from the customer who want to produce something. That I want to point out, because I think it makes a major difference now.
So, and of course, yeah, so we respect everybody's corporate secrets, yeah. So, but I think in the meanwhile, the industry have understood that basically a corporate secret on like a specific topic is not enough to have like the broad picture and to bring like fuel cells to work, yeah. So, and then combining things so without hampering its own technology, so is something so that that is certainly so what we do, yeah, and yeah.
You never learn the proprietary technology if it's patented anyway, but the interesting thing for me is this notion of cooperation.
Exactly.
Simple openness, and that has increased manifold. Examples like the electrolyzer industries, they all share competencies and discuss openly what they're doing. So, but let's get to this innovation cluster. You know, universities are full of clusters these days. How do you define the cluster within the VDMA fuel cell department? What are they?
The name Innovation Cluster is coming from the support program, which is managed by NOV, which are just beside for the people who are here on this show. And NOV is the partner of the German Ministry of Digitalization and Transport. And there is a formed innovation cluster which allows us to build up this strong cooperation between people for scaling up production. That's the topic of our cluster. It's not as a cluster, as you mentioned, within the university world. It's an innovation cluster which should bring forward scaling up fuel cell production. We are still coming from a manufacturing side, from a manufacture, from small scales, and now we are going up. And that creates new questions, and we would like to be part of this discussion and give valuable hints how we can be faster, build up speed in this process.
Yeah, so in this cluster will be filled with like different activities. So we have like today like 3 main different activities, I think. So you will talk about that. But so what I want to say is that I think this is a strong sign to show that exactly that production industrialization is now like the focus. Yeah, so not only for VDMA but also for the industry. And so we want to specifically send that sign, fill that with activities, and speed like industrialization up. Yeah, so as I said in the beginning, so this will so be the dominant sector. Yeah, so our focus in the industry, and yeah, having like a good footprint in Germany. So I clearly believe in Germany we have like all of these technologies, manufacturing technologies, we have to adapt them, yeah, to fuel cells, and then bringing like machine technology, process technology together with fuel cell knowledge, so with the companies like the institutes, and focusing on that point will really speed up to reach the goal that at least in fuel cells Germany can have its head start in production, and also keep like the position as a strong manufacturing center in Europe, in the world. Yeah, so and I think that's an important focus.
Yeah, and on the definitions of clusters, give us the.
Yeah, as I've said, it's coming from the support program. We get this support from the ministry for 3 years, and your question was also in which formats we discuss this. I've already mentioned workshops where we bring together people on specific topics. The next one will end of June on degradation, which follows a workshop we have had last year. It's virtual, but now we will do it again personally. And I think that's quite an important point to get this openness and to get the right discussion on this topic. Second point, which I want to mention, is we are involved in a lighthouse project called HiFab. That's a research factory which is in the moment built up in Ulm with the colleagues from ZSW and also from Fraunhofer ISE in Freiburg with the topic on MEA. And we are dealing with the industrial participation in this project, which is quite important for us because it gives us some specific features. One I want explicitly to mention, that's the so-called generic stacks. That means building up a production, you need samples. You need something to go through the machine. And in the moment, there are no samples from the industry because every company has its own bipolar plate, which is own IP. And now we generate a generic stack which was defined by the industry, which will be used as sample for testing different product steps. And I think that's a quite important point, and we hope that's one point we can build up speed and make it also a bit cheaper for all when they have samples at specific lower costs than there are now.
Yeah, so just to add, like this HiFab project, lighthouse project, so it has like the focus on the fuel cell stack. Yeah, so not like beyond that at the moment. So and that is kind of distributed between Fraunhofer ISE in Freiburg and like the ZSW. So so different basically manufacturing processes are located like at the different sites, but covering the entire value chain. Yeah, so generic stack important. Yeah, first of all to try out like new technologies, like and go and to have like the security that like a test sample is there, but also it's important to provide like enough stuff, yeah, components to the industry, yeah, to have like prototypes built like after the stack. Yeah.
I think we've covered basically the application of the organization VDMA for the fuel cell industry. As we round up our conclusion here, I wanted to try to address this from another perspective. Germany as an industrial location, Germany as an economic location. What I mean by that is Germany is the #1 per capita exporting country in the world. And when you look at its exports, people think, okay, is it you know, cars, or is it what, bread or wine or whatever? No, it's machines. It sounds so nebulous, but they're so fundamental to industries, and Germany is a world leader. So the name, Verband Deutsche Maschinen- und Anlagebau, so it's the Mechanical Engineering Association, but in fact it is a coordinating organization for a big chunk of the German industry that combines all of the assets in terms of skills. And I mention this because I think what happens in Germany is that there are players, not necessarily within the fuel cell industry, who have off-the-shelf knowledge, expertise in materials, expertise in mass production, all sorts of expertise, and they need to combine them. Previously, what we've seen here is the fuel cell industry having to reinvent the wheel, not knowing that there's any networking going on so that they could say, hey, can you do the bipolar plates? Do you guys have any expertise in catalysts? Can we combine things? So I suppose this is the positive side, and on this positive side, a short comment on that is that basically not only the explanation for your organization, but the explanation for where it's going to play a critical role in the coming 20 years as fuel cells become available on an industrial scale.
You described why we create this innovation cluster, because we have this all here. We have production machinery, we have stacks, we have material know-how, we have system components, and all have to work together. And that's the reason why we create the working group fuel cells. We don't mention it, but it started in 2003, so we are still long on this way, and we are quite happy to be here tonight and to be here within the market. And that shows that sometimes you have to have a long, it needed a bit longer, but in the end, the success is important. And we are engineering guys, and our association is dominated by engineers, not by lawyers. So we want to work on this, and I think we get success in it. One point I not mentioned up to now, we also have a new brochure just for this trade show here. It's within the slide on the wall and also on the tables here, where the industry shows their picture and where also is a bit more than we can discuss in 20 minutes. So take it and get in contact with us.
Yeah, exactly. So what I wanted to add to your question is that we believe, and especially like with the environment that we see now, yeah, Corona pandemic, war, yeah, we see that so Germany needs to speed up in these important technologies. Really bring forces together. We cannot lose traction on that side. So and you are completely right. Yeah. So Germany is exporting like a lot of machinery. So is doing that so with many countries, and has therefore also like always had like a cooperative approach with many countries in the world. So and this is important to keep that, but yeah, to take back like the steps that have been made in the, what I would say, last 10 years, where like dependencies are created. Yeah, so on Russia, on like fossil fuels in certain areas, and we need to go back to our strength. So to that, like large, like exporting machinery, expertise, and to cooperate with the world, but without dependencies.
On that note, we're sort of running out of time, so it's unfair to ask another question and expect a one-word answer, but I want to stress the point you just made, Manfred, because the other side of the equation of Germany as an industrial success story and an export capital of the world in terms of per capita volume is, of course, the dependency on energy. And this threatens the very backbone of German industry. And what that means, of course, and we all know this, we watch the news, don't we? We all know that the dependency on particularly natural gas could end tomorrow with a huge eruption in the value chain throughout the German industry. So we know the problems, the size of these problems we have to solve. This is an unfair thing to do. I'm saying this because what I'd like to hear is let's continue this conversation next year and see how it's gone. We have to upscale radically the tempo at which we address these issues. And I hope you're confident that we can do that.
Yeah, so we are confident, and so I want to say renewable energy seems to be like the solution to that dilemma, yeah, energy dependency, because that allows us to have like an own footprint, but also to have like new, maybe better allies in terms of like energy. And to reduce like dependencies on what we see today with all like political obstacles that we have created.
So it's unfair to cut this off where we are now, but we're already over time. I've been talking to Gerd Krieger, who is CEO at VDMA, and Dr. Manfred Stefener, who is president of VDMA. Look up their brochure, keep informed, and we'll be returning next year with a report on how the increase of industrial production of fuel cell technology has progressed. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And happy to see you next year.
Thank you.
Mark it in your calendar.
Yes, I will. Okay.